Good evening. I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged. Tonight, we are looking at a race that could have a profound effect on what your children learn and how they learn it. The race for Superintendent of Public Instruction. And with us today, two of the Democratic candidates hoping to take on the eventual Republican nominee in that race, Kathy Hoffman and David Schapira. Thank you both for being here. Now, both of you started out as teachers. You were a teacher in Tempe. You were a special education instructor. And we'll start with you, David. What in that world led you to believe that you think that the state needs a change, that you could be the top educator in Arizona?
Well, there were a lot of things. I started my career actually as a classroom teacher in Phoenix, and I went back to my old high school to teach. You know, my family's been in the public education system in the state for 4 generations, and we've seen this metamorphosis over time, especially since about 1990. Not only were funding decreased, but it's been 24 years since we've had an educator leading the education system. And seeing the changes at the Department of Education has been very discouraging. The department used to provide resources to school districts and educators to help them better serve students. And now it seems like they just provide roadblocks. And so we definitely need a change in the education leadership in this state, and that's the reason I'm running.
And Ms. Hoffman.
Yes, I've had a lot of diverse experiences working with kids as a speech therapist. I work with students from all backgrounds. I've worked with students all the way from preschool up through 8th grade primarily. And through those experiences, I've just had a broad range of experience, and I've seen firsthand what our students and our teachers need. And I've been astonished to see that we keep electing people and confirming people such as Betsy DeVos and electing people like Diane Douglas, people who have never worked in a classroom, to run our public schools.
Okay, now I want to start with you. First question here. The Board of Education agenda tomorrow, they are looking at the possibility of whether or not to discipline any of those teachers with the Red for Ed movement who walked out of the classroom for higher wages, not just for teachers, but for support staff professionals and whatnot. What do you think about this move by the board right now?
I find it to be appalling. I have no understanding of why they would seek to punish teachers who are seeking to improve their livelihoods. And Diane Douglas had a lot of opportunities, and the legislature had a lot of opportunities to fully fund our public schools. We had many walk-ins before the walkout, and they had many opportunities to fully fund our public schools, but instead they offered us a 1% stipend, which was not even for all teachers. It was not for our paraprofessionals. It was not for other special education professionals. And so it was something we had to do, was to walk out. And I look forward to being at the board tomorrow to stand up and say there's no reason why we should be punishing certified teachers such as myself.
And Mr. Schapira, I want to read this quote now from Board President Lucas Narducci. Now, he says, quote, "For something like that to happen in our state, I just think we need to have something reviewed so that due diligence on our part is accomplished."
See, and I think Narducci, when he's talking about the future. If something like this were to happen long-term, next school year, what would the board's capacity be? Now, I would hope the board would still not exercise even if they have the right to punish teachers for exercising their First Amendment rights. Let's be clear, this is really about Diane Douglas. This is yet another example of, rather than Diane Douglas supporting educators across the state, making sure that they have the resources that they need, she's threatening educators. Yeah. And Diane Douglas, as a member of the State Board of Education, she's the one who's really pushing this agenda, whereas I think the rest of the State Board of Education is trying to do their best to support educators. So I'm anxious to be at the meeting tomorrow, and I'll be speaking on behalf of my fellow educators and my students across the state.
A lot of people think, though, that the teachers, they broke their contracts when they walked out. Now, obviously a lot of these teachers use personal days, which they're allowed to do, which isn't a breach of contract. How do you respond to something like that?
Yeah, I don't know any examples of anyone breaking their contract, because I know that most of the school districts in the state closed. And so whether a teacher voted to participate in the walkout or didn't, they weren't at school because the school wasn't open. For the schools that did stay open, all the educators I know took personal days or vacation time. And so Diane Douglas is fishing for an issue where she can score political points in the Republican primary. And that's all, frankly, this is about. And we need to voice our concerns about that, as not just as candidates running against Diane Douglas, but I know there will be a lot of other folks there wearing red tomorrow, and a lot of folks across the state who wish our state school superintendent would actually focus on supporting educators.
Ms. Hoffman, he brought up Diane Douglas.
Yes.
Now, her response was she did not support these walkouts. Was that the correct response in a situation like this?
Completely the incorrect response. She, as superintendent, the role is to stand in solidarity with teachers, to support our teachers. And just the other day in the Republican debate, she said she was not elected to support our teachers. Right. And that was shocking. And I can speak from personal experience at my school in the Peoria School District that our teachers, including myself, we had to extend our school day by an hour, of the students as well, where we had an extra hour of school every day to make up that time. And then on top of that, at the end of the school year, there were days added on, work days, where the students didn't go to school, but the teachers did. They did make up those days. And so there's clearly no sign of broken contracts here.
My wife's school district did the same thing, where they actually added days on at the end of the year for teachers to make up those contract hours.
Okay, now the walkouts did produce the promise of a 20% raise by 2020. Obviously, the first year is 9% or 10%, depending on how you want to look at that. Are you happy with the result?
I think it's a good starting point. You know, before, like I said, before we were only expecting a 1% stipend, so to go from a 1% stipend to a 9% raise for the next school year is a huge victory for our educators. However, it does not go far enough. Many of our classified staff are only seeing a few percent raise, sometimes 3 to 5% raise, and so we're creating a greater divide between our hourly staff, such as our teacher aides and paraprofessionals, whereas the certified teachers are getting 10 to 12%. So I'd like to see that divide closed more. And further, there's many other policy issues that need to be addressed within our public schools.
Mr. Schapira, was this a good result?
I think the governor's giving himself a few too many pats on the back, and there's some misinformation going around. Part of the misinformation is that the raise was going to happen with or without the walkout, and that Doug Ducey planned this all along. The reality is, at the beginning of the year, there was another 1% that he had promised that was going to be added, and they were going to add some capital money. In fact, in March, Doug Ducey was quoted as saying that a 20% raise is not coming now or any time in the near future. It was only after the results of the walkout vote were announced on a Thursday that the next day, Friday, Doug Ducey came out and announced his 20 by 20 plan, which I use that plan term loosely because he didn't talk about revenue. He didn't talk about who was going to be getting a raise. And still, 20% is not law yet. They added an additional 8% over what they were already planning, 1% from last year, 1% they'd already committed for this year, and another 8% to total for 10. By the way, that still leaves our teachers among the worst paid teachers in the nation. And by the way, like Kathy said, our support staff are still not getting the raises that they deserve.
Are you guys confident, though, that the money is going to be there? Because some of this is balanced on rosy budget projections. And now we're hearing some lawmakers, your former colleague in the state Senate, John Kavanaugh, saying that there could be a budget shortfall. Are you confident this money is going to be there?
I am not confident. And further, this shows the importance of electing legislators who you know are going to absolutely be behind our public schools. And we do not have that right now. Our legislators, they say they support our public schools, but then we see things like expanding the voucher program, which threatens to defund our public schools. And we continue to elect people who, in fact, are defunding public education rather than providing the supports we need. Over the past decade, we have seen more cuts to public education than any other state in the country. And this must change.
I think the plan, unfortunately, from the Republican majority in the legislature and from the governor all along, has been to say that this 20 by 20 plan is coming in order to boost their chances in the November election, and then to start undermining the fiscal picture after the election. I think John Kavanaugh did not get the memo, and so when he came out recently and said that the revenue projections may show a structural imbalance, I think he missed the memo. He was supposed to wait till after the election to say
Okay, we're going to have to take a quick break right now, but we do have more with the candidates for Superintendent of Public Instruction just ahead, and still ahead on Politics Unplugged. Was First Lady Melania Trump trying to send a message with her jacket? The coat that is causing a flap. Still ahead here on Politics Unplugged.
Car wreck? Check. Motorcycle wreck? Check. Truck wreck? Check. Bicycle wreck? Check. UFO wreck? What? In a wreck, you need a check. Call Lerner Road now for a free consultation.
Call 977-1900.
TitleMax makes it easy to turn your title into cash. Just go to TitleMax.com. Find out how much you can get.
Using TitleMax.com, I got $1,400.
$3,200.
TitleMax.com got me $9,700.
Best of all, most credit types are approved. Next time you need cash, try TitleMax for rate. Try TitleMax for the amount you need. Find out why so many people are saying,
I got my title back with TitleMax.
Get your title back with TitleMax. Lions Roofing has been serving Arizona homeowners with pride since we were a cub back in 1983. And now, we're proud to be a part of Arizona's family with the Lions Roofing News Chopper. If you're looking for a roofing contractor you can roar about, give us a call or visit us online. Lions Roofing, fiercely protecting Arizona homes for 25 years.
Oh, hello there. I'm Windfall Willie, Chief Fun Officer of the Arizona Lottery. My job here is to bring you an endless amount of fun. Come on. Ian, I got something for you. The ultimate fun machine. Try this. Play for millions of dollars in cash prizes with a $20 or $30 scratcher's ticket. With so many games, you're sure to find one that fits your fancy. Ooh.
Wet n Wild is the one where you get more water park fun. More of everything you want. Yeah, more rides, more slides, more family fun. And more value with big savings online or with coupons from Subway. Go Wet n Wild Phoenix, get more.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. We have more now on the race for the Superintendent of Public Instruction. We have the two Democratic candidates for the race, Kathy Hoffman and David Schapira. Thank you both again for being here. Now, let's start this segment off. I heard a lot of agreement basically on issues during that first segment. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Schapira. Where do you differ with your opponent here? Why should Democratic voters in this primary vote for you instead of your opponent?
You know, I'll say on policy issues, we've had a lot of debates throughout this election cycle, and on policy issues, we generally have broad agreement. I think the biggest difference between Kathy and myself is experience. And the first thing I'll say is Kathy has far more experience than Diane Douglas, and I think would certainly do a much better job leading our school system than Diane Douglas, who's never worked a day in a school. But my experience, it has a little bit more breadth and depth. I've been a classroom teacher, I've been a school administrator, I've been a school board member, and I served in the state legislature, as you know, on the Education Committee and the Appropriations Committee, fighting in the trenches for our public education system and for our students across this state. So I think that's really the primary difference.
And Ms. Hoffman, he's saying you just don't have the experience that he has.
Well, anyone who's been in a classroom knows that it is an administrative type of job. You have to be able to juggle many tasks at one time. You have to be working with adults and children. And so it is, especially as a speech therapist, I'm constantly running meetings, organizing, bringing people from all backgrounds together. Another thing that I will add is that I am fluent in Spanish and have a background in researching and publishing articles on the speech and language development of bilingual children, and I think this also uniquely qualifies me for the position. That, you know, I've worked with some of our most disadvantaged and marginalized population of children, our special education kids, and you know, I work in a Title I public school, and so I want to make sure that all of our students' needs are met.
Now, I had moderated a forum discussion a couple of weeks ago, and you had some pretty harsh criticisms here of Mr. Schapira. I mean, what is your top criticism here with your opponent?
Look, what I was trying to say there was that when I am superintendent, I will do everything in my power to empower teachers, to make sure that we have successful teacher prep programs, and I want to make sure that, especially in a time when we have such a need. We have so many vacant teaching positions. We have teachers leaving the state to teach elsewhere because of low pay. We need to do everything in our power to be motivating the next generation of teachers. And so when I'm superintendent, I will make sure to do everything I can to make sure that we have successful teacher prep programs in our high schools.
Yeah, and Mr. Schapira, you care to respond to that? I mean, are you going to be able to empower teachers? How do you plan on going about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very proud of my work as a school administrator in recent years, and it gives you definitely a unique perspective on the education system. Not everything is always perfect, and not everybody is always necessarily in the right seat on the bus. Sometimes you've got to shift people to different positions than where they started from, and sometimes folks need professional development and training. And so, you know, we need a state school superintendent who is going to restore what used to exist in the Department of Education, which is high-quality professional development and training opportunities. We also need to be clear, the State Department of Education has a staff of about 600 people. And of all of the 7 candidates in this race, other than Diane Douglas, who has been doing the job for the last 3.5 years, I think Kathy and I would both contend not very well, I'm the only one who has supervised a large number of educators. And I think that's critically important, to have had that experience, to have dealt with adversity, to have seen things that were not where they needed to be, and to have worked to get them there.
There is also a question of certification and training, and so I've been very transparent about my certification. I have my National Speech and Language Hearing Association certification. I have my speech therapist license, a speech language pathologist license from the Department of Health Services as well as the Department of Education. And so that's also been a concern, is hearing about that some candidates may not be as transparent about what their current position is and what their training and experience has been.
Which candidates haven't been transparent?
I remember in that form that you brought up that that I heard that he was talking about for the last 4 years being the assistant superintendent of EVIT, and I knew that was not the case at this time, and so that and I know that that position had ended in the January of 2017. So to say for the last 4 years is not entirely transparent. And at that point, when I brought that up, he did bring up, yes, I'm a consultant for EVIT, and that was the first time in over a year that I've ever heard him state his current position title at EVIT.
The last is past tense, and so I was talking about the last 4 years. The prior 4 years, I was serving as assistant superintendent. It would be doing a disservice to the employees that I supervised, including principals and educators and administrative staff at EVIT, to continue in that capacity while out on the campaign trail. So I am currently a consultant for EVIT, so I still do a lot of work at EVIT and still maintain a lot of the projects I was working on. But I thought it was pretty clear when I said the last 4 years, I was talking about prior years in the
clear,
past.
and if you looked at his Twitter, it said leader at EVIT. If you looked at Wikipedia, it said assistant superintendent at EVIT. His website said assistant superintendent. There were many places where we looked where it was not transparent to the voters of Arizona what his position was. And I want to be transparent to voters. It's my goal to be a transparent superintendent, and I think that's critically important in this election that be brought up in the primary.
Yeah. Dennis, this is a non-issue. I mean, I encourage everyone to go look at the Wikipedia, go look at my website, go look at Twitter. It says that I do work at EVIT, and that is true. I am still a consultant for EVIT. I still have an office there. I still go there and do work for EVIT. Honestly, Dennis, if this is the biggest difference we can find between each other in the primary, then I think that just shows that, you know, because both of us have worked in the education setting, we have a lot of the same views on things. If this is the biggest distinction you can find is whether or not we agree on if last 4 years means you're currently doing something, then we're in a good spot.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this, but thanks for coming by, and I'm sure we'll be talking here in the future here, but we got more on Politics Unplugged just ahead. The president reverses course on family separations at the border, but at the same time, members of Congress seem farther apart than ever when it comes to immigration reform. We'll ask our panel if there is any way to make everyone happy here on Politics Unplugged.
Elements Massage is spreading kindness this month, and you can do the same. Head to Elements, purchase and enjoy any massage, and get a free 30-minute massage to pay forward. Just mention the word kindness. Pass it along to someone who can benefit from therapy and relaxation. Take care of yourself and spread kindness this month with Elements.
Introducing Jack's new $3 sauced and loaded fries. You get our hot and salty fries, smothered in cheddar cheese and creamy guacamole, plus your choice of 3 tasty toppings: tender carne asada, savory chorizo, or chipotle chicken, each for just $3. So tonight, kick the party in your mouth up a notch with Jack's new $3 sauced and loaded fries. Only at Jack in the Box. Delivered exclusively with DoorDash. Order now.
A long time ago, I was in an accident, and I dealt with insurance companies by myself. I was ping-ponged back and forth between people, not getting calls back, not getting responses, and it was a total nightmare. Don't call the insurance company. Call Lerner and Rowe.
Call 977-1900.
Today, I am a race car driver.
Today, I am a master builder.
Today, I'm an explorer.
Today, I am a hero.
Imagine the fun.
Thanks for letting us come into your home each week. We pray for you, and we're believing that you're going to see God's goodness in amazing ways. Stand still, and you'll see God deliver you. When you remain at rest, Almighty God fights your battles. Everybody around you is going to have no doubt the God you serve is an awesome God. I promise you this, every time you turn us on, we're going to try to inspire you, to challenge you, to help you become all God's created you to be.
Emergency Chiropractic has been treating auto accident injuries for over 40 years. And though much has changed since 1977, such as cars, hairstyles, and fashion, our message has not. After all these years, we continue to provide quality chiropractic care to those in pain following an auto accident. Now, we really can't help you with past regrettable fashion choices, but if you've recently been in an auto or motorcycle accident, don't suffer in pain. Call today.
Emergency Chiropractic, the kind of care you want today.
How can they expect me to sit in a classroom on a day like today? That's why I highly recommend Primavera Online Summer School. You can study anywhere you want. Now you can catch up on credits, or even graduate early. Save summer and check out Primavera today.
And welcome back to Politics Unplugged. It's time to talk it out. And with us today is Catherine Alonzo with Javelina Consulting and our partner from First Strategic, Marcus Dellartino. Thanks a lot. I want to start with a discussion, a little bit of your reaction to that debate with the superintendent's race. I mean, who do you think is going to be, end up pulling this one out? I'll start with you, Marcus.
Well,
on the Democratic side.
Yeah, on the Democratic side. David, the thing I know about David Schapira is he is a relentless campaigner and will put a lot of shoe leather in and works really hard at it. So, my perspective is he's going to win the primary out of pure hard work. I think when you're listening to him, their message points are very similar, but I think this will come down to hard work and raising money, and at that point, I got to give the edge to David Schapira.
And do you think that that one of these two, either of these two candidates, can win in a general election here in Arizona in November?
Yes, absolutely, because this is just such an unexpected time. We never know what's going to happen. But I think voters are demanding something different, and the public is demanding something different. And we've seen that this year with the Red for Ed movement and the demand that people are having to see something different in education. Diane Douglas won by hair last time, and 4 years later, it's a completely different landscape.
And is education going to be the issue that everybody thought it was going to be heading into the year? It seems like maybe that a 20% raise that the governor handed out kind of, pulled the air out of that, or let the air out of that one.
At the end of the day, honestly, I don't think this will be about teacher wages as much as it will be about charter schools versus traditional public education. And the Republicans have had a tendency to favor charter school education over traditional public education, which always wasn't the case, but certainly has been the case in recent history. And what you're doing there is you're ignoring 85% of kids who are going to traditional public education schools, and which is it's a bad plan for Republicans. So what they need to do is rebuild their brand, start working on traditional public education. That being said, this is why I think that the Democrats probably have one of the best possibilities of gaining a seat in the superintendent seat.
And Democrats still motivated about this issue, education, as they were at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think more so. And it's really been, this education issue has been building and building and building over years. And I think voters have gotten to the point where they're sick and tired of seeing investment in education ripped apart and want to see a meaningful investment. And you see that being yelled from the rooftops, and that's absolutely going to translate into the ballot box.
All right, let's move from local education here in the state. Now let's move on to some national news, and it really was the story of the week. We're talking about President Donald Trump signing that executive order ending separation of families apprehended at the border. Of course, the entire reason they were being separated in the first place was because of a change in his own policy. And the Attorney General announced that there would be a zero-tolerance policy. That meant everyone crossing the border was apprehended, and it was against the law to hold children in jail. But previously, families were usually released awaiting a court date on their immigration status, and the optics not really good on this. How is this going to,
I'm impressed you got all of that out in a relatively short amount of time.
It was a whole lot.
In the most unbiased reporting I've seen so far.
So, I mean, how did we get to this point where, Donald Trump, he was saying that it was law. His hands were tied, that he was just enforcing the law, and then he comes back, signs an executive order, basically admitting he could have changed it all along.
Although more recently is now sort of backpedaling on that. So I'm not too sure at the end of the day where we are, other than this, is that this has been going on since George Bush was president. So certainly since George Bush's presidency, through the Obama administration and into Trump's administration, we've been dealing with this. And frankly, I think that the problem rests in Congress, who had ample time to do comprehensive immigration reform or certainly address this problem. So while people are angry, and I understand why, realize that this problem's existed for a very long time, and a possible solution also existed for a very long time. And if you were mad at Congress before, you should be madder now that they hadn't solved this problem.
Yeah, and, we usually don't see this president back down from really anything. What changed this time?
Well, I think what we do see from this president is complete inconsistency over time and just going with what he feels like any given day. So in that regard, it's not really unexpected. But he was seeing incredible pressure from even his own spouse and daughter, and not to mention people within his party, other leaders in other nations. Incredible pressure from people who were just saying, this doesn't make any sense. It's inhumane, it's immoral, and it seems to be just because the president feels like it. And so I think that culminated in a change of policy. But even now, it's completely unclear how the children who've been separated from their parents and their families are going to be reunited. So it's just another headline.
That brings us on to this other issue that First Lady Melania Trump did make a visit to one of those immigration detention centers. Now, she did praise the people working there, thanking them for caring for the children. Now, earlier in the week, she had tweeted out that she did not like seeing children separated from parents and called for Congress to act. Now, here is what the president had to say about her role.
No, Ivanka feels very strongly. My wife feels very strongly about it. I feel very strongly about it. I think anybody with a heart would feel very strongly about it. We don't like to see families separated. At the same time, we don't want people coming into our country illegally.
Do you think his family really did have that much of an influence on maybe him coming back and pulling back from this policy?
I think it's one is his family, two, and two, the national outcry over it. But here's the problem, Dennis, that really needs to be solved that nobody's talking about, is once these people are being released. The problem is they're not showing back up for their court date, and so we have no ability to track them. The other irony that I find huge in this is the countries that are most responsible for this, Honduras, El Salvador, those presidents of those companies are complaining about what an inhumane procedure that we're implementing while ignoring the fact that their citizens are seeking asylum in the United States because of their bad policies, because the drug cartels have taken over their countries. That, at the end of the day, is a bigger picture that needs to be solved so that we can fix this.
We do have to hit the Melania jacket thing. I was just showed up at the border.
Max's favorite subject.
Apparently it was a $39 jacket that she showed up here, and it said, I really don't care. Do you? Tone deaf?
Oh, I mean, completely tone deaf, incredibly intentional. I don't think that anybody who is photographed that much isn't incredibly intentional about what they wear. And so there was certainly a message in it, and just completely, insensitive and regretful, I hope.
Okay, now let's come back to the most latest that Trump is now saying that there's no way to pass an immigration reform bill, and he's telling Republicans not to do so now.
There's clearly no will on either side, right? Everybody wants to keep this an issue going into the midterm elections, and it's sad, and it's unfortunately it's a state of where we are. That I'm doubtful that a package will get. I think this specific issue will get solved, but it will not be comprehensive immigration reform, and that's what, at the end of the day, what really needs to be solved.
Yeah, but how much of an issue is this going to be? I mean, this has been an issue cycle after cycle after cycle. I mean, I think that is this going to be an issue for Democrats?
Well, I think immigration is an incredibly important issue, and our immigration system is completely broken and needs comprehensive overhaul, and yes, is an issue for anybody running for office. But the thing that's also mixed up in this is government dysfunction and the government's ability to get things done. And the president shows again and again and again that he's just absolutely not willing to work across the aisle, and I think that is going to be something that can distinguish itself for any Democrat running for federal office this year.
All right, well, that is all the time we have tonight, but be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.